Let's use our Cricut Maker to create some beautiful festive napkin rings that will also double as keepsake ornaments that your guests can take home after your holiday celebrations. Hi there, I'm Jane from Sustain My Craft Habit. We're going to be using 4 festive designs from one of our holiday SVG bundles. These 4 designs are available free to you. While you can use them to make napkin rings, they're also great for making ornaments, cards, any Cricut craft that you might have in mind for Christmas. In this video, I'm going to show you the supplies you need to make the napkin rings, how to upload and format your SVG files in Cricut's design space, how to cut them onto felt fabric, including tips for cutting felt using your Cricut machine, and finally, we're going to assemble these napkin rings using the no-sew method. So let's get started. For this project, we're going to use the standard grip mat, some transfer tape, the rotary blade with housing, hot glue gun with clear craft glue, some scissors, felt sheets. I have acrylic ones that are about 8 by 12 inches, and you're going to need 2 green, 1 red, 1 white, and some scrap brown to make 4 of the napkin rings. We'll also need some gold banding. This is a stretchy one. If you have other gold ribbon, that will work as well. A little bit of polyfill stuffing, and then finally some gold and pearl seed beads, which are optional to embellish the napkin rings. So now that we've gathered all our materials, it's time to get our felt mounted onto the cutting mat. So I'm using the standard grip mat for this particular craft. You could use the strong grip mat, which is ideal for fabric, but we're going to do a little hack to help preserve our mat here. I always worry when I'm putting felt on there that all the fuzz from the felt is going to basically destroy my cutting mat. So this trick I learned ages ago, but if you take a piece of transfer tape, cut to 12 by 12, and then mount it onto your cutting mat with the sticky side up. So you can see here I'm peeling off the backer off of that transfer tape. Now we're going to actually place our felt pieces moving forward onto the transfer tape rather than directly onto the mat. And so you'll see then at the very end of the craft, when we remove this transfer tape, our mat will still look decent. Now I'm using a mat that actually is not in great shape to begin with. It's not a new mat, so some of the stick has already gone. And just to make sure that this piece of transfer tape doesn't shift around, I'm using a little bit of masking tape or painter's tape to attach it to the mat. Now that our transfer tape is nice and secure on the cutting mat, it's time to mount the felt pieces. The felt that you often buy in the store usually comes about 8 inches wide by 12 inches long. You can buy 12 by 12 sheets, but whichever one you buy, you'll just mount it onto your transfer, the sticky side of the transfer tape, and it'll hold it down. I'm just smoothing it out and pressing it down there. The only thing here is that you'll note our felt doesn't go all the way to the top corner of the cutting mat. So in the next step, when we actually go to cut, we're going to have to make a bit of an adjustment before the cut stage. Now it's time to open the Cricut Design Space software to use for our project. You'll want to go to a new canvas and then upload the SVG file that we've provided with the 4 ornaments for this particular project. These 4 festive designs are part of a larger bundle, and it has about 26 to 30 different ornaments because it's part of a whole advent calendar set. So once you upload these designs into Design Space, you'll want to give it a name. We like to put a few tags in there in case I have to go looking for it later, and then click import and add it to the canvas. These designs are already sized to 4 inches high, so if this is what you want to do, at this point you could just hit make it and proceed. But if you want to explore the file, change the size, or create more of these ornaments, you can actually ungroup the set. And what you'll see is that each ornament actually has a couple of layers because we're going to be layering the felt fabric. So this is just to show you these different pieces that are going to be cut onto your felt. And as I said, if you want to make 4 of them, you would just simply hit make it. If you want to do more, you're going to select your piece and then hit Control D, or under the edit function, duplicate, to make another copy of whichever pieces you'd like to duplicate. Now we are all set. We're going to press make it. After we've selected our machine, we're using the Maker 3, and then we'll be prompted to say, are we using it on a mat, which we are, a 12 by 12 inch mat. Confirm, and then we can now see our 4 different colored mats with how the designs fit on each of those mats. A couple of the colors, like the brown and the red, there isn't much cutting to it, but obviously the green will need more felt for than the other colors. Now, do you remember when I said we're going to have to make some adjustments? Well, if you can see here, the fabric on that mat is set to 12 by 12. I guess I should have made the adjustment under material size at the side, but I was just kind of monitored where I had placed the felt onto my mat using the grid of the mat, and repositioned the pieces a little bit so that everything would fit on the 8 by 12 sheet. I don't know if you're like me, I don't like to waste any of the material, so even though this ends up taking more time, I really can't resist kind of rearranging things so that they fit together better. It's like a little puzzle so that they fit and I don't have to have as much waste material at the end. So once I'm happy with how it's laid out and I'm confident that it's going to be where my felt is on the mat, we'll proceed. If you are using your phone or mobile device like a tablet, you do have these similar options. It's just going to look a little bit different. You can use your hand and a touch screen to move all the pieces and adjust where they're going to go. But like I said, I prefer to use the mouse because this tends to require real finesse. In any case, it's doable, and once you've mapped out where the design is going to go onto the felt fabric that's mounted onto your cutting mat, we are ready to go. Next, we'll click Make and be prompted to connect the machine and specify the material that we're planning to use, which in this case, I selected the acrylic felt option. Then we're prompted to ensure that the rotary blade is installed in clamp B of the Cricut Maker. So this is the rotary blade with the housing. You have to just remove that cap, and then we're going to open up that clamp B, take out the fine point blade that's already in there, and then place the rotary blade inside. Once the blade is in place, it's time to load the cutting mat into the machine. Because we're cutting felt, which is a little bit thicker, I like to move these wheels off to the side so that it doesn't get caught on our fabric. Next, we press the load button and the machine measures how much fabric there is to make sure that we're good to go, and also does a calibration of the blade. Once that's finished, we'll press the go button and the cutting happens. Now the Cricut Maker 3 is pretty quick with this rotary blade. My blade was actually fresh and brand new, and it did a really great job in cutting all these pieces. And this video is in real time, so you can see how quickly it's going, and it really only took less than a minute to cut both of the green pieces for one of the wreath napkin rings. Once done cutting, I unloaded the mat, and you can barely see where it cut, but I decided to pull off the patterns. I couldn't wait anymore, and of course it's off the video, but look how nice and clean the cut is. And in less than a minute, we cut these 4-inch pieces to make one napkin ring. I repeated these steps to cut 2 more pieces so that I would have 2 of these wreath themed napkin rings in the end. To make one each of these ornaments, you'll need 2 pieces of the felt fabric that's 8 by 12 inches. Here were the cutouts for the holly leaves as well as the trees. I actually cut out enough to make 2 tree ornaments. And then you can see that the transfer tape still looks good. It's still adhering to the mat, and we can use the same piece of transfer tape to continue cutting the next pieces of the pattern. So I next mounted on the red felt, positioned my design appropriately, and then loaded it into the Cricut. And you can see here that it cut the little circles for the holly berries really nicely. At this point, I was noticing that the transfer tape was being cut through, so I adjusted my settings in the next cuts from the default level of pressure to a lower level of pressure, and this is because my blade was brand new and it still did the cutting no problem. But I just put those pieces of transfer tape back down and continued with the same piece of transfer tape for the whole project. So if you haven't guessed by now, we love to use our Cricut Maker to cut felt and have a really popular line of felt flowers, felt succulents, and felt ornaments over in our Etsy shop. And at sustainmycrafthabit.com, you can find more free SVG files for all of your Cricut crafting. Now that we have all our pieces cut out, it's time to assemble the napkin rings. To start, I cut this gold elastic band to 8-inch lengths and then used my little Easy Press Mini to iron them nice and flat because they were kind of bent and kinked in certain areas. So just on a medium setting, you can iron those out and it just makes them look nice and crisp. Now that those are all cut out, we can start with the holly leaf ornament. Now this particular craft, if you like to sew, you can take the time to hand sew or even run the pieces through your sewing machine, but we're going with the no sew method and running a thin bead of hot glue around the one edge of each leaf. Then we gently place the second layer of that pattern over top and let the glue set a little bit before stuffing a small amount of polyfill stuffing inside. Now a little bit goes a long way for this. We don't want it to be too full. It's just the goal is to give it a slight little puffy effect. So after tucking in a little bit of that felt, we're going to continue around the shape with our hot glue gun and put a bead of glue that will help to close together that particular ornament. Just be careful not to burn your fingers. You may want to use one of those silicone finger protectors, and it will get easier as you go along. But there you go. You can see how cute it already has a bit more of that three-dimensional shape to it. I'm not worried about placing filling into the berry part of the leaf because we're going to layer over the second leaf as well as the berry, so it will be thick enough in this area. Okay, you're going to now repeat this process to fill your second holly leaf. And once you've done one or two of the ornaments, you'll get a better sense for how much stuffing needs to go in there and really how much space you'll need to leave open as you're working. But it does get faster and they turn out really cute. Next we're going to add in our gold band, and I put a generous amount of glue, and then the trick here is to put the band at a bit of an angle and then kind of twist it and cross it over. This will ensure that the band, when placed over your napkin, will lie nice and flat, and that the napkin ring ornament will also lie flat against the napkin. To finish it off, you'll just glue the second leaf over top and then finish it off with the red berry. If you'd like to place another berry on the back side, you'll have to cut an additional one to have two for each ornament. If you have little bits of glue, you can just clean them off with some scissors or even passing a hot heat tool over it to melt the glue. Okay, let's now assemble the wreath ornament in a similar way. The wreath ornament and the other ones have just two pieces that will layer on top of each other. But again, you'll want to place down that gold band at a bit of an angle, add a bit more glue, and then twist it so that it overlaps almost in a crisscross manner. Again, this will make sure that it's going to slide over your napkin so that it's facing the proper direction. Now we're going to glue on the top layer of the wreath starting by placing a thin line of glue around the outer circle and placing the top layer over it. And basically we're going to work our way around slowly, creating a little gap on the inside that we can then fill with a bit of polyfill stuffing. A little bit goes a long way because there's not a lot of space in this particular ornament. You can use the flat end of a paintbrush or pencil to also help tuck some of that stuffing inside without getting your fingers all burnt. To finish off this ornament, we simply glued the red felt bow underneath the gold ribbon. And this piece is beautiful just like that, but if you wanted to give it a little bit extra pizzazz, you can glue on some of these pearl seed beads. I played with a couple of ways to get the glue on there, but in the end I used this weeding tool, or Cricut weeding tool, and just put the bead on the tip of it and then dipped it into the hot glue at the end of the hot glue stick and placed those on semi-randomly throughout the surface of the wreath. You need very little bit of glue. If you have some fabric tack, that might also work a little bit better or just as well, but I didn't have it, so this is the approach I used. Some of the beads that I have here have a bit of a gold tint to it, so they're alternating, and I just really like how it adds an extra bit of interest to the wreath. If you like to spend the time to sew them on, you could do that as well before gluing the wreath together and stuffing it. As I went to assemble the tree design and the birds, I realized that I hadn't actually cut the pieces from the brown felt fabric, so I needed very little. I used a little bit of scrap brown felt for that one and then cut out those pieces. For the trunk of the tree, the beak of the bird, and the bird's eye. These last few pieces were pretty small, but still quite accurately with the rotary blade. I did just want to show you what the mat looks like after we remove that used transfer tape. You can see where all those cut lines were and the bits of felt from the ornaments that we cut out on here. Now my blade, as I mentioned, was really sharp, so it did cut all the way through even the transfer tape, but that's okay. I just used my scraper tool and a little bit of time to gently peel away all those bits of transfer tape, leaving behind my cutting mat that looked as good as new. I'm going to go through the assembly of these last couple ornaments pretty quick because the process is pretty much the same. You're going to put that gold band in there and then some glue all around. Stuff that with a bit of polyfill and then close it up. Sometimes I wish I had super speed crafting abilities like this. Wouldn't that be fun? Again, you could leave this particular ornament as it was or add on some of these little pearl and gold beads just to finish it off and give it kind of that extra glamorous touch. Now it's time to put together that final ornament, which is this beautiful white peace dove. We're going to follow the same process and just tuck that gold band underneath the wings so that it'll hang, if you decide to hang it from the tree, as if it's flying. Now, I don't know which of these 4 particular ornaments is my favorite, but if I really had to choose, I think this white dove is pretty high on the list. She's just so elegant and will look, a whole bunch of them would look really pretty hanging on a tree. For the bird, I did also add a gold bead for the eye. And that's it. Our festive no-sew felt napkin rings are all done. And to put them on your napkin is pretty simple. Just pinch the center of a large square napkin so that it's in quarters, almost like a fan. And then you'll slide the point, that middle point of your napkin, through the gold loop of your napkin ring and simply place it down on your plate. We hope you've enjoyed this Christmas craft idea. We share hundreds of Cricut projects over at sustainmycrafthabit.com as well as our YouTube channel, and we have even more Christmas craft ideas and projects for all year round. We love to upcycle and DIY with nature-inspired materials. You'll find a lot of projects using driftwood, pine cones, and other thrift store finds. So if this is also your jam, we'd love for you to join our Sustain My Craft Habit email community to stay in touch. Simply head on over to sustainmycrafthabit.com to sign up. You'll receive crafty newsletters filled with all sorts of fun DIY ideas and craft inspiration, and it will also give you access to our craft room, which is our free resource library filled with project templates, printables, and of course, free SVG files. At sustainmycrafthabit.com, you'll also find an exclusive coupon code for our digital SVG shop. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really look forward to connecting again. And if you have any questions about this particular craft, reach out at any time. We'd love to hear from you. Happy crafting!